All right, everybody. This is Nate Hagerty, host of the ProMarketer podcast, where we bring on the top tips and strategies for building a tax and accounting practice. And I'll tell you what, I am really excited for this conversation I'm having today with Roger Knecht. He is the host of one of the top podcasts in the industry called Building the Premier Accounting Firm. That's actually how I got to know him. I was a guest on his podcast a few months back, and I have met him at Scaling New Heights some time ago, and we've connected over a variety of synergistic thoughts related to doing business and caring for your heart in the midst of it, building something that is growth oriented while not burning you out. He has helped build a really pretty large accounting practice in the state of Utah called the Universal Accounting Center. Wait, did I get that name right, Roger?
Yeah,
Universal Accounting Center?
That's right.
Okay, yeah. And they were, this is kind of remarkable. I know this behind the scenes because I've been involved with some of the Inc. 5000 things. They were in the Inc. 5000 list for 5 years straight, and they were on the Inc. 500 list. For my listeners who don't know the Inc. 500 list, that you were on that for 1 year. That's the 500. You were in the top 500 of the 5,000. Is it growth rate? Is that the 500? Okay, so you had explosive growth for 1 year. We're talking probably over a couple 100%. To be in that stratosphere. So you had this massive period of growth. You've got this pretty large practice. You told me offline, 15 or so employees, as well as a bunch of 1099 contractors. You're a multi-million-dollar firm dealing with many clients in a variety of different service areas, tax, advisory, accounting. Do y'all offer financial planning as well?
Not financial planning, but wealth advising.
Wealth advisory, which is different. So you don't have assets under management per se, but you advise people in that context.
Nor do I have my licenses for that.
Of course, right. And you probably don't want to mess with that.
Nope.
Yeah. Anything else of note in your little bio that I missed, Roger? You've had an interesting career even before the accounting world. You were in media. You've got this podcast. You're just sort of like, you've got this face, like you're a leading man kind of guy. So I need to shut up and let you talk, because I feel like whenever you talk, I feel better about myself.
Well, thank you.
Is that awkward?
No, that's not awkward at all. So I'm happy to talk about whatever.
Let's talk about me for a minute, okay?
Okay, Nate,
just joking.
Talk about you. Let me do this, Nate. The thing that I think is amazing is we each have our own journeys, and literally the path that I'm on now isn't necessarily what I would have seen years ago. So just to put it into context, my journey, like you mentioned, I was in the film industry. That was back in the 90s. I was dealing with family entertainment, producing family films, and that was something I was passionate about. I loved what I was doing, but circumstances led that I ended up getting out of that industry and just found accounting. And I am not an accountant by trade. Or by training. So I don't have a bachelor's or master's degree in accounting. I'm not a CPA. And for some people, that's kind of a shock, but let me just be very, 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 very clear. After working in an accounting business for 20 years, run originally by a CPA, believe me, I've been baptized in the accounting space, and I can hold my own with anyone. And so with that understanding, I'm obviously now the president of Universal Accounting Center. And that journey is fascinating. I did have life goals, many of which I've realized, and it's simply because of the fact that I've been blessed with opportunities which I seized, and it's been with a lot of work ethic. I've had challenges, I've had struggles, I've had situations where I felt, I wouldn't say defeated, but I didn't see the way out. And through tenacity, perseverance, through faith, I was able to literally find myself on the other side of things. The phrase, "this too shall pass," has really resonated with me. And it's become, now that I'm older, this realization of, even in the hardest of times, I can have the faith that, you know what, things are going to be better on the other side. I will be a better person because of it. And I can take all of those challenges, bottle them up, and realize, you know what, because of them, I have experience, I have empathy, and I can help other people go through similar challenges, because life is full of those, and I'm able to give back. So
I love that. Thank you. I love that you went quickly into that place of depth. I think there's one of the reasons why I enjoy you so much, Roger, is I also came into the tax industry, not the accounting industry, though we're now serving clients in both. I came into the tax industry sideways from a background in youth ministry, and I never expected to be running a marketing agency in the tax industry and the accounting industry. And here I am. And I also have seen the benefit of those troughs and valleys. And my first year in business, we did almost $1 million of revenue. And I found myself $100,000 in debt because I was just so green and dumb about so many things. But that carved something within me. And it now, where we built a multi-million-dollar company here and 18 employees, whatever, I know that I'm not this great business guy. There's so much grace, and there's so much to be gleaned from failure and not getting it all in a direct path to success. Like, the journey of getting to a certain destination is so important. And so we're recording this, it's after the tax deadline. A lot of our listeners are probably sipping margaritas by the pool, relaxing a little bit, taking a deep breath, launching back into sort of the preparation time and some of the off-season activity, extension work, what have you. We've got a lot of accountants who are kind of in the thick. It's their normal regular season, ordinary time, so to speak. But I also know just the moment that we are culturally, and in the accounting world and in tax world, there's a lot of disruption. There is a lot of shaking happening, inflationary pressure, business models that used to work aren't working nearly like they used to. Bookkeeping practices are having to really move towards adding different components of advisory or what have you, because they're getting squeezed by bench and some of these other entities that are, and Intuit even, that are offering these really low price services, overseas pressures, what have you. In tax world, it's very similar. You know, in tax world, Roger, you know this because you guys offer tax services in your practice. But when I look at the landscape, I look at an aging demographic of CPA and tax practitioners. So there's less and less tax practitioners, with more and more clients needing help because it's crazy. And so there's a lot of burnout happening. There's a lot of angry clients. There's just a lot of angst. So you've experienced a lot of vicissitudes. You had this period of growth in your practice, and then you had some periods where it didn't grow. Speak to the moment now for the burned out tax practitioner. Like, what would you say if I'm a burned out CPA practitioner who just sort of wants to hang it up and move along to a different kind of trade? What do you say to that kind of person in this moment, based on your almost 24 years in the industry?
I've got a lot of things to say. First thing I'm going to say is it's not about you. The moment you're thinking about yourself, you're in your own way. This is about your customers. And what I'm going to suggest is you need to find your passion. The passion that you bring to the table is what enables your clients to legally avoid perhaps the tax liabilities they could be facing without your expertise and experience. It's challenges that they're going to be facing where they just don't know how to manage the tax code like you do. There's so many facets of tax that you can embrace and become passionate about, become the expert in. And if you're kind of ho-hum about it, first of all, there's an opportunity. First, you're in it. So the barrier to entry, you've already passed if you're in the profession. So you're on that side of the fence. But let me just throw a few things out to you. I think at first, some people get into the tax profession because of the allure of everybody needs tax preparation.
Easy market.
And easy market. Everybody's going to need it. You can price your services and get paid well. And for some people, the allure of I work 3-4 months out of the year and I make an entire year's worth of income is very appealing. But the reality of it is this is a profession, and it's not just turnkey, get in and do returns. It's tax planning. It's getting into tax resolution services, cost segregation services, doing research and development, R&D tax credit services. I mean, there's so many elements of this. If you wanted to just pick an area that you could become an expert and excel in, and it's you that's holding it back. So you just need to basically say, it's no longer about the money. It's more about me making the difference in people's lives and helping them be successful. And if you can take that perspective, your purpose becomes a little bit different. different. And you said something earlier that I want to go back to because I think it's relevant to this point. You brought up the fact that in our careers, we're all going to experience failures, challenges. And what I would just say is change that word and instead use the word experience. You've had experience, and those experiences are going to be things that you can draw upon. They're not failures. You learn from them, hopefully, and you can help other people avoid those things. And when it comes to tax planning, this is the big thing that I'd like to emphasize. If you just took that as part of your emphasis as to the services you provide, either businesses or individuals, think of the opportunity. You've got your tax season, that first quarter of the year where you're doing the returns, but now literally take and identify during the tax season individuals whom you feel that after the season's over, you can meet with and advise them on missed opportunities that when the tax year was over, you couldn't do anything about it. But by darn, this year, we're going to leverage this opportunity. And you set those files aside, you identify them. And once April 15th passes, you come back to them and say, I need to meet with you one-on-one because I had to file what it was, but we don't have to do this again. And you plan with them and say, this year, do this, this, and this. This is some advice, having done this for as long as I have, that I'd like to share with you to help you avoid these things. You do that in the second, third quarter. That's a relationship they've never had with a tax preparer. Now you go from the second or third quarter meeting with all those clients to share with them insights that you're sharing and giving them. You now go to the fourth quarter and you meet with them one last time before the year end to say, we talked about these things. Did you do them? Make sure you do them still before the year is over. And what's changed in your life that we want to address before the year is over? Maybe there's some tax laws that came out that are ending the year that we can implement before the year is over, strategies that we can put into place that have changed because the year has progressed from our last meeting. This is all tax planning. Don't be the fool that you're now coming to your clients during tax season saying, woulda, coulda, shoulda, you coulda. Well, you never told me.
Right.
I want a tax strategist that I'm working with. And so if I'm working with a tax strategist, they're doing more than just the preparation. They're doing the planning. And if you build into your model, first quarter, I'm doing the tax preparation. Second quarter and third quarter, I'm meeting with my clients. Third and fourth quarter, I'm doing the tax planning from this year. And the second and third quarter were about last year. I mean, you just build those relationships into or conversations into your relationships. And now you're like a whole nother level of a tax preparer.
Right.
That's what we're talking about.
And now you're able to price it on a monthly basis instead of just the, by the form kind of model or by the hour kind of model.
100%. Because now you're not just getting paid for the preparation, you're also getting paid for the planning. And this is the beauty that you just tapped into. No longer am I going to the client at tax preparation time and saying, oh, by the way, you owe me $500, $1,400, $4,000. And they're like, crap, where am I going to come up with that? You go to them and say, based on the tax planning and tax preparation services, I'm going to charge you $100, $400, $800 a month. And I'm going to be doing this for you in addition to the tax preparation. And when it comes tax time, I'm not going to ask you for a lump sum. We're going to amortize this over the year. They're thinking the world of you. Oh, you mean I don't have to come up with $1,000, $4,000 in April? No. I'm going to charge you $200 every month, and come that time, you're golden. They love you.
I like telling people in our industry, I gladly pay my tax practitioner $1,500 per month. There's a variety of things that we do in that, and I've got multiple entities, and there's a variety of planning and what have you. And I'm in the industry, and I know a lot. But I also, I value an expert, and I'm not going to tell you who it is or what have you. A lot of, anyway, but I'm happy to do that. And by the way, I'm paying an advisor also. So like I have a CFO type person that I'm meeting with weekly, looking at KPIs and P&Ls and all the different kind of financial reports. And I've got a tax person. So I'm paying both of them over $1,000 per month, and happy to do so because I'm a marketer, and though I'm steeped in our industry, I need that kind of team in my corner if I'm going to build something that is bigger than just glorified freelancing. And we're now at the scale where I need that. And I could probably save, there's cheaper people out there, but I'm not paying by price. I'm paying by relationship and value. And I always really try to emphasize that to people and try to blow people's brain a little bit that I'm paying that. And I'm only a $2-3 million business. I'm not like this big whale, there's a lot of me out there.
Oh yeah. So two things. One of the things that I really think, because we're talking about this passion, the person's experiencing burnout.
Yes, thank you for going. That's what I also want to go back to. Yes.
So that burnout, I really feel that it comes back to a number of things. One of which is, first of all, stop being just a doer, a preparer. There's so much more to do in this profession, such a difference you can make for your clients, both individual and business. You just need to step into that role and become that strategic tax advisor. The second thing I'd say is you need to be proficient. And if that confidence comes from doing programs or experience, you just need to find, what does it take for you to look a business owner in the eye, a client in the eye, and confidently say, I can take care of your tax strategy needs. For us, being that we're a post-secondary school for accounting professionals, we offer a program called the Professional Tax Preparer Program, because we want to give people that credential to actually say they know individual and business returns. Well, that might be the path for some of these people. Other people, they have the confidence, they have the experience, and they just go running. But the other part of this whole thing that I'd like to just bring in for the burnout individual is just realize, if you don't see the benefit of what you're doing, I don't think you're either listening, or I don't think you're doing enough. Get out of your way, start doing more for your clients, and start listening. Because if you're doing your job well, people will appreciate it when you come to them and say, hey, last year you owed 6,000, we got it down to 2,000. Last year you owed 6,000 and we were able to budget it and plan for it. You're good to go. I mean, it's all those things that you're doing with the client that in the end, they're just basically grateful for. But if you're not hearing it, it's possibly because you are burnt out. And I think you need to reassess what's going on.
Yeah, that's really good. The two parts that I want to highlight that I love that you brought out, and thank you for returning back to the burnout question, because this is a really important conversation for people to marinate in a little bit. The solution for burnout, finding your passion and having a perspective of serving. Now, you can have an unhealthy serving perspective, and you can give away your entire like energy level to clients and have no boundaries and no wisdom about how you are implementing a service oriented practice within your practice. And I've seen that. I've seen people who give away their cell phone number and let clients run their lives because they want to serve, and that burns them out, because eventually they just get stepped on and used and abused and unappreciated because they haven't positioned it properly. But when you do it with wisdom, and I'd love to hear about some of those boundaries that you set up, because when you have that heart to serve, but you do it within particular categories that serve you as well, that's, I think, the sweet spot where you can approach your clients with an attitude that is, I'm here to help. How can I help? But here's the boundaries that by which you can have my help, and be clear about it. Magic happens there, because as long as the client has the map, they're going to really appreciate the help that you provide, right? So I want to hear about how you guys set up the boundaries for having this kind of serving orientation with your clients, but also how can a tax preparer or tax practitioner who doesn't have these ancillary services maybe talk a little bit more about how they discover what would be the path, whether it's resolution or planning or particular kind of credits. Like I know employee retention credit is still popping out a bunch of revenue for people and business owners, what have you, but that's going to go away eventually. But so resolution is obviously going to be a big deal in the next couple of years. How do you help tax practitioners find that service area, that area of specialization? Okay, so it's two questions. Number one, what kind of boundaries you guys put in place with your clients so that you can serve them with whole hearts and not kill yourselves? And number two, so not about universal anymore, you speaking to other practitioners, like how do they find that kind of passion?
Great questions. First one, the boundaries. This is just me, so I don't want to imply that this is best practices or the solution. It's just what we've done. We've established within our company a rule that basically says we respond within 24 business hours. That expectation that we try to push onto the customer is deliberate. We want to.
How do you communicate that?
It's part of
autoresponder.
It's part of our onboarding. And if in the dialogue it comes up, hey, you were slow to get back with this, I left a message, we remind them it's a 24-hour business turnaround. So we have pushback in the sense that there are some people that feel that they should be able to call and get someone immediately.
Now, effectively, does that mean like 3 days because 8-hour days, or effectively is that like within 24 hours if it's a business time, like a Monday to a, if it's Monday at 2 by Tuesday at 2?
Yes. So the way I do it is Friday, I'll get back with you by Monday, but Monday I'll get with you by Tuesday. Now, let me just be clear. The expectation is the following business day.
Right.
In reality, the way we track it, I'm noticing we're about 2 to 4 hours. Yeah.
Same with us.
4 hours. Yeah.
But identical over here.
Is there.
Yeah.
So the expectation is 24 hours. And I will communicate it. If somebody is expressing frustration, I will remind them, well, just so you know, we got your message this morning and it's this afternoon. So we did have 24 hours. I could have gotten in touch with you tomorrow morning. Okay. So there's a bit of education.
So you're having to talk about that 24-hour expectation a lot in the beginning, at least with clients.
Yeah, because we'll sometimes have to walk them back from the edge. You know, they're frustrated. Hey, I called you this morning. You didn't get back with me. No, it is this afternoon.
Right.
And we did get back with you, and we're trying to get back with you within 24 hours.
Right.
You can ask us a question. We need to be able to do the research and find out what the right answer is, for example. So the fact that I don't answer the phone when you ring or text right back when you do or email immediately isn't that we're not meeting what we set as parameters. So that's the first thing. The second thing I feel is equally as important, and it's like correspondence. What I mean is if you call me, I will call you back. If you text me, I will text you back. If you
mirroring what the client's preferred point of communication.
Because it is, just like you said, preferred communication. If they chose to email me, I'm fine emailing back. If they chose to text me, I'm going to do in kind. And so if I, within 24 hours, do that, I'm great. Now, unfortunately, when it comes to voicemail, you've got the phone tag element. You could call me this morning. I could return your call tomorrow or this afternoon, and we go back and forth. I'm sorry, but you wanted to talk. We're trying to talk, and we'll go back and forth. And I honestly think we do perform very well within that 24-hour turnaround. But that expectation is what we're trying to manage. And that's just the reality of the situation. The second thing that you've got is to this journey, the path. My advice is simply for an accounting professional, just look at it as stages. I think so many of us think in linear ways. So let's just be linear for a moment about this. Most individuals enter the tax profession doing individual returns, just simple 1040s, and that's totally fine. Well, at some point, you're going to get enough experience or desire to take it up another level. And you can either go a little deeper into the individual returns, or you can step into the business returns, because so often the people that are paying you to do a tax return is because they have complexity. They've got investment properties, they've got a business. Well, who are you running into? Typically business owners that you can do the taxes for the company and so forth. And so all of a sudden, if you start to have a familiarity with tax law at a business level, that gives you that breadth of information that you need to say, okay, well, what path do I want to go? Do I want to remain an individual? Do I want to go business? Well, if you start to like business, then you can actually start to entertain, well, maybe I can help people change the entity type that they're in for tax strategy purposes. Maybe I can go into R&D or cost segregation or whatever.
Or even full-on advisory.
Full-on advisory. And so it's an evolution. I think it usually begins with the individual returns, and you can see if you want to go deep in there. It typically lends itself into business. In that business space, you probably will be introduced to some of these elements, because if you're dealing with property owners, cost segregation might be the way to go, especially if you're dealing with people that are investors and real estate people. All of a sudden, that's ideal. But if you're dealing with a manufacturing company and so forth, you might find R&D is more the specialty that you enjoy. But the other thing is resolution. You just might find, hey, I'm enjoying as an EA, as a CPA, this working with and representing the client. Maybe I want to get into the resolution space. There's so much stress and anxiety. I can make good money there, but I can also resolve situations. And so I think the journey begins and it just kind of naturally evolves. But you can go down that path fairly quickly, but it is still, I think, a journey. Now, some of us are fortunate enough that we have either friends or family that are down that space. And we're saying, well, my uncle, my dad, he does tax resolution. Well, you just don't jump into tax resolution, in my opinion. You've got to go down that path, as I'm suggesting, but at least you're beginning with the end in mind. I'm going to get into tax resolution, so I'm not going to be consumed or caught up with these other things because I'm going down that path. And if that's what you're doing, I think it'll be an easier journey. So that's my advice.
That's great. We have a client, longtime client, is a father-son duo based out of Sacramento. And the father had kind of the classic seasonal tax business model. And the son, who's a little younger even than me, and I'm young, let's obviously.
Youngest perspective.
Yeah, it's funny. I
Youngest
no longer
perspective.
qualify that for the 40 under 40. I used to make that list, and
just wait till you get your AARP thing in the mail. There you go.
Anyway, but we've helped him build a 7-figure resolution company out of the little seasonal tax, not little, but a fairly healthy seasonal tax business there in Sacramento, because the son wanted to just build his own thing within his dad's company.
Mm-hmm.
And I've seen that so many times among kind of our, not just our client base, but in the industry as well. And so that's an interesting path that you've laid out there.
The example you gave there, I love it when I work with firms and see firms that are diverse enough that they can actually have in-house those specialties.
Mm-hmm.
You could have a person that is the resolution specialist, but you can also have somebody that's the R&D or the cost segregation. I mean, you can over time build a very healthy business model around all of those services, and admittedly they're tag teaming off of each other, right?
Yeah, that's a really interesting path that you just laid out, though. Starting with the 1040s, moving into business, moving into higher level business, moving into planning, moving into advisory, and there's micro steps in between. Is that a path that you see a lot of people take in the industry?
So the answer is yes, but here's what's interesting. I find a lot of people start the path and happily stop at a settling point. Mm-hmm. That is not where they thought they were going to end up, but they're content with this. They're like, I'm busy, I'm happy, I'm making great money, I'm doing a lot for my clients, and I wanted to go further down this. And honestly, I'm happy where I'm at. So my point is simply
people they want to build like a KPMG clone or whatever, and then they stop and realize, do I really want that? No, I've got 3 employees and we're doing 3 million in revenue. Life is good.
That's right. It's sometimes not that end. You have to be willing to look at the reality of the situation and go, I'm actually kind of happy right now.
Yeah.
I like this. This is good. I'm going to settle right here for a moment. And settling's not bad. If it's deliberate and intentional, if you've got a holistic kind of approach to life, if business is good and you still want to be growing, I don't ever want to suggest that you're stagnant, but you don't have to necessarily offer a brand new service. You can change from client acquisition and client fulfillment to say, we're not going to take any more clients on. We're not going to offer any new services. We're going to figure out how to do our job more efficiently and profitably. Charge the same rates, but get the job done more efficiently. Well, if that's the case, I'm more profitable. Well, then I don't have to worry about growing the business. I don't have to worry about offering new services. I'm just going to focus on my efficiency. And then at the end of the day, the business is actually more valuable because you develop the processes, the systems needed to actually then service that entire client base. And that's what people buy. They don't buy your client base. They buy your business, your process, your reputation in the market. So anyways, just some thoughts.
Yeah, that's really good. What Universal, has it always, you've been there for almost 24 years. They were obviously in existence when you joined. Mm-hmm. They were about to begin a process of growth that you helped steward. Did they, have you guys shifted a lot, or have you just added some just juice and fire to the same model? I imagine there's been quite a bunch of shifts over the years. Many. As the marketplace has changed.
As my daughter would point out, it's from the episode with Friends where he says pivot as they're going up the stairs on the couch.
Right.
Pivot. Yeah. So we've had our pivot moments, and there have been more than one. So the whole idea is, when the company first started back in 1979, it began as a school, and it literally was training accounting professionals, bookkeeping professionals, how to properly do the books for small businesses. It was a phenomenal program, still done today, but it's obviously been updated. But the company evolved, and when it began in 1979, it was a traditional classroom experience. You would go to a place and sit in a desk and listen to the instructor. Well, we have, as a company, needed to pivot to where we closed 22 of our campuses, all of our campuses. No longer do we have a campus. About, let's see, 8-9 years ago, actually it might even be 10 years at this point, but the point is we closed our campuses. We've pivoted to the point that it's all online training. That's been greatly enhanced as to what we do. All of our programs come with coaching that's offered with the curriculum, so as to help with the tutoring, learning the concepts, and the implementation to ensure that you're coached by someone that's in practice. And so it's not just conceptual, it's actually practical advice. So the whole point is our programs are intended to help what we say an individual be in business for themselves, but not by themselves with Universal. And so when you're referring to my being involved with taking the business, the journey I've taken it upon, the business owner, the principal, he's the second president of the company. He's still involved. He's the principal owner of the business. I meet with him every month, and literally the company is nothing familiar to him. He doesn't involve himself in the company anymore, because not that he has nothing to offer, it's just we're so different than what he recalls, simply because of the choices we've had to make over the years. We've had to pivot. And so we had divisions of our company that were the principal divisions of our business that no longer exist. I mean, admittedly, campus, there was a division of our company called Campus. It's zero revenue anymore. And yet it was the principal place we made our company sales. You go to another division of our company that was seminars. We had people traveling around the United States, 6 presenters that were on the road 40 plus weekends a year. And at one point, I was one of them as well, 40 plus weekends a year. We would go around the United States and Canada principally, and each weekend do training. And I did that for a few years. We had teams to do that department, zero. We don't do that anymore. And it's all because things change. The business model changes. And I'm sure that I've got changes ahead of me still that I will be involved in.
Right. So what are you seeing from your accounting students and your accounting clients right now? What are the pivots that you are seeing people make, and how do you advise people to be thinking about any kind of let's future cast, okay?
Yeah.
Getting ahead of what's coming. How do you see that right now? I mean, whether it's market dynamics with inflationary pressure and macroeconomic realities, or just micro within each different practice and your students, what are you beating the drum about right now for your students?
So I will forecast. I will take the ball and see into the future a little bit here. 2 things, huge things, and we're already seeing it. So what I'm going to say shouldn't sound new, but I think it's hugely relevant and important. First thing is this: when we are working with our clients, whether it's in accounting or tax, we have to, at some level, get into the advisory. Now, it might be an additional value add that you're doing to the services you're currently providing, or it literally could be an additional revenue stream, a very conscientious relationship you have with your client that they're paying additionally for. Either way, there are 2 questions that the accounting profession, the tax profession has to do a much better job with our clients. And it's basically asking of them or of ourselves, first, therefore what? I'm looking at this information, therefore, what do I do with this information? And I think too often our clients, they lean on us, and we have for years, I think, just pushed back saying, well, no, it's your company. You need to be running the business. And it's not that I'm suggesting we offer answers or solutions, but we have to be asking ourselves the questions, therefore what? What does this mean? And draw attention to those things that the business owner oftentimes is overlooking, not seeing, but it stands out to us because we're so familiar with the story that the accounting language is telling. The second thing that I think we need to be doing
just to highlight it and restate it in maybe different language, offering advisory type services in whatever your wheelhouse practice area might be. So whether it's tax or accounting, what have you, figuring out a way to price and offer at a good value to your client advice, coaching in a sense around those numbers, interpreting the data.
And I wouldn't go so far as to say as offering the advice. It's not that I'm suggesting we have answers to everything, but I am suggesting that we need to be drawing attention, highlighting, asking questions about information so that it becomes part of the conversation. If it's there in the narrative, they're going to appreciate what we're doing for them because it's more than just the reports. We've got to highlight, draw attention to things that stand out to us when we're not involved in the day-to-day operations of a business, either at an accounting or tax level. Therefore, what? That, if you're making all this profit, what am I going to have to do with tax related to the profits I'm earning? Well, therefore, buy new equipment or invest it here. I mean, therefore what? I have this money. Therefore, what? We've got to be better at that. The second, and it's related to this, is we've got to be willing to ask questions about the business. I think too often the accounting, the tax professionals are either too busy or they feel it's not their place to ask. And I want to give permission to everyone in the accounting profession. It is okay to ask the question about the business owner and what they're deciding to do in the business. As you see things going on, I'm seeing you're spending more money here. I'm seeing that this is happening. What's going on? Just be a little bit more curious about what's happening rather than so busy that you're just trying to paper push, hey, these financials are done. A case in point, one of my business clients that I just worked with, last month, we did some changes and they noticed that, or actually I noticed that they had payroll that appeared to be double booked. It was the import that was coming out of Intuit with QuickBooks, and it was the bank statement. And so it's something to that effect. And I was like, this appears to be double booked. And he just went back to the account and they go, oh yeah, it looks like one's an automated and one was manual. And I was just astounded. How did that person not catch that? It was so obvious in my opinion. And
that's a big chunk, presumably, of the books.
Well, it obviously impacted the bottom line by thousands of dollars. And I was just basically saying, double check your work, just look and point some things out. So often when I meet with my business clients for whom we do not do the accounting work, I'm astounded that there are things that stand out to me when I look at the numbers that the accountant never bothered to point out. If nothing else, just a highlight, a mention in an email. By the way, I see that revenues are up 10%. Celebrate that with the client, point that out. Don't just give them the numbers and imply you didn't even bother to look. Hey, I see that your growth this quarter over last quarter is up 10%. That's amazing. Whatever you're doing, keep it up. That's all that had to be said. And as accounting professionals, we just don't get into the narrative. And I think we need to do a better job of it.
And I think the same is true with tax, because I see a lot of conversation like on Twitter and LinkedIn where people gripe about the surprises that come with the tax paperwork. And what I always want to say to these tax practitioners is like, why didn't you know this before? You know, you're gobsmacked by the client whipping out these, you know, this receipt or this entity or whatever, and you're complaining that you've got a gambling winnings or crypto or whatever it might be. And why weren't you involved in that in the first place is my question.
All right. So I'm going to plead, or I'm going to be transparent here. Okay. Earlier, you were sharing how much you're paying for tax services and so forth. I'm going to share with you an aha. So our tax advisor, let's say, told us, my controller, to actually calculate prepaid taxes on a certain percentage. And using that advice, she paid the quarterly taxes. It came time to file the tax returns. We had overpaid. Okay. This is how much we overpaid because they were not doing their job. Okay. And I will say I wasn't doing my job either, but we paid in advance these quarterlies enough that this next year I've got 2, 3, possibly 4 quarters worth of tax credit that I
you don't need to pay.
I don't need to pay. You know how stupid that sounds that
you've lent Uncle Sam a lot of money.
It's like, this is stupid. And I went after both of them not with a vengeance, but I felt like, are you guys idiots? This is ridiculous. How did this happen? Well, it happened under my watch. So I got to back up a little bit, and I didn't bite as much as I wanted.
The buck stops somewhere, and
it does. It stops with me. But look at the missed opportunity.
Right.
My tax accountant told my controller, this is what you need to do. My controller, getting the instructions, followed them. I was like, but guys, where along the path did we not see this? I didn't see it. So I'm not even perfect. But the point is was that not a teaching moment? Well, it is. It wasn't a failure. It was an experience.
There you go.
It wasn't a failure. It was an experience. I've learned from this.
Semantics. I hear what you're saying. Yeah, yes. I like what you're saying related to failure and experience. But
all right. So let me give you now my number 2 thing to answer your question. I think as an accounting profession, tax preparers, one of the things that we have to do a better job of doing is embracing technology. I think for many people, for years, admittedly, because it was new, the AI, the machine learning, all that stuff is intimidating. What is coming out technologically is impressive, but for many accounting professionals for a period of time, it seemed as if it was the end of the profession. And honestly, I think it is the key to our profession existing even longer.
Right.
Why? Because if we embrace the technology inevitably will have disconnects. This system won't talk to this system. This system won't import to this system, and it breaks. Well, who's needing to be the expert to connect these things? When I'm a business owner and my payroll isn't communicating with QuickBooks, who would I expect to fix it?
Right.
I go to the accounting professional and say, these two things aren't talking, fix them. It's not because I expected them to know debits and credits. It's because I expected them to know the platforms and how to better make them integrate. Well, you need to become familiar with the tools of our trade and be comfortable with them. When you go to a carpenter who is very good using jigs and hammers and saws, that's great. But if you talk to somebody and they say, hey, I've got an air compressor gun, a finished nailing gun that seems to jam all the time, it would be nice to think that the carpenter has become so passionate about their trade that they know, well, maybe the PSI on the compressor isn't high enough that it's now jamming your finished nail gun. Well,
Yeah.
it's not because they are a carpenter that they didn't choose to know the equipment. They are a carpenter, therefore they chose to know the equipment.
That's right.
So that's what I'm just trying to suggest.
I like that. Yeah.
The profession needs to understand that for us to have a integral relationship with our clients, it's going to be that they're going to be calling us when these various technologies and systems aren't working, aren't connecting, aren't doing what they were intended to do. They're inevitably going to break. We're the go-to people. We need to become trained, certified, familiar with these different technologies that are now part of the accounting community.
Well, and the relationship is always going to be a primary component of that. So it may change what you spend your time talking about. Certain tasks might be dispensed with or automated or spat into a report that you've already got at your fingertips instead of having to compile by hand. That it just changes what you discuss and maybe offers more fertile ground for that transition into advisory services. Is that some of the software and the AI, the tech stack stuff that's out there now more and more and more actually just gives you the tools to have more of a service orientation and more of a relational kind of practice that I think a lot of us really believed that we wanted to have from the beginning. I mean, to go back to the very beginning of our conversation, a lot of people started this because it was a way that they could get paid well to help people. And we can still do that. It just might change. We might not be slinging 1,000 1040s. We might be working with 100 businesses. And that's a transition or less, 30 businesses. And that might be the transition that a lot of people need to take. So this is good, Roger. I think we could talk for hours and hours and hours, but I know that they can get hours and hours and hours of you talking to people who are not nearly as compelling and handsome as me, but I am on there on your podcast. And again, building the premier accounting firm, mine was the best episode, but aside from mine, there had to be other great episodes out there. What are some of the things that people could expect listening to your podcast?
You know, that's such an interesting question. I am asked, what are the episode topics on a regular basis? And I'm giving great suggestions, by the way. I just got a phenomenal one just the other day. But interestingly enough, in order to build the premier accounting firm, most of the topics typically do not stem around accounting. It's honestly things that are related to marketing,
the blocking and tackling of business.
It is. It's running a business, but it's from the accounting perspective.
Sure.
But some of the most entertaining ones that are kind of a shock are we've dealt with mental health. We've dealt with imposter syndrome topics. So I've had on some excellent individuals that have really brought some great perspective and insights that at the end of the day really didn't have to do with running an accounting business. It was literally running a business and being that leader that so many of us need to be as we run our companies. And it wasn't at the end of the day an accounting conversation. So it's, I think for some, a welcomed, nice surprise that it's a little bit broader than what I think the title implies. But once you hear the conversations, you do realize how relevant it is for them to be successful.
That's awesome. Well, thank you, Roger, again, for your time. Again, I recommend everybody connecting to what he's doing there, building the premier accounting firm, the Universal Accounting Center. You've got great products related to micro topics within a lot of the things that you teach about. And so I I do really encourage people to connect with Roger. He's a sharp dresser, even though we don't have the bow tie today, but you find him at an event, you might know him by the bow tie and the dapper suits, and he is one of the sharpest dressed men in most rooms. So obviously that really matters to me. Not really, but I like it. I know how to see quality when I am in its presence. So anyway, thanks again, Roger. Really appreciate you, and looking forward to connecting again for another episode, because I think there's a lot that we can talk about.
Happy to come back, Nate. This was wonderful.
Great.